the one male lion. There's actually 5 of them, 3 of them in a beautiful position, right next to a muddy puddle, hiding in the shade, and slowly digesting parts of the buffalo carcass that they've been eating over the last 2 days. This is a coalition of 5 young boys, all between the ages of about 4 to 5.5. I'll have a look at the black end of that one's tail that's flicking up every now and again in response to the flies. Now, there's a reason that lions have black tips to the end of their tails, as well as black behind their ears, both in the males and the females. And it's a really great way because black shows up as a color very clearly in the bush. So it's a great way of emphasizing the parts of their body that are so essential in visual communication. So just like pet cats, when their tails start to thrash, you know instantly that they're in some kind of either hunting mood or slightly angry or unsettled. And reading the body language of the big animals out here is so essential in playing a role in what we do. I must tell you, the smell here is glorious. I have Dave sitting behind me, operating the camera, and we've got the gentle smell of decomposing buffalo wafting across towards us. Luckily, this afternoon is much cooler than it was yesterday, so we don't have to stress too much about the temperature, and I'm sure that the lions are rejoicing in that fact as well. So with their heavy body size and thick manes, and that combined with very full bellies that are involved in digesting plenty of meat, which in turn produces enormous amounts of heat, they are probably enjoying this nice drop in temperature as well. It's something that is quite extraordinary to me. Mrs. Ridge is wondering, because Mrs. Ridge was watching yesterday as well, and she saw us when that buffalo carcass had been killed yesterday morning. Now, Mrs. Ridge, it's something that always astounds me is the resilience of the animals, not just in terms of their digestive system, but in terms of the way in which they heal from wounds. Now, obviously, they've been building up antibodies throughout their lives. As a cub, they've been introduced to those antibodies through their mother's milk, and then straight onto eating solid, rotting meat carcass at times. So it is an interesting aspect of the way in which the lions operate, and it applies to all of them across the board. I have seen lions eat buffalo carcass that is 4 days, 5 days old, that is totally green in color. It's an incredible thing that they have. And the same goes for the way in which they heal from injuries. They don't get secondary infections very often. In a way, they heal up from wounds that would lay us up for weeks at a time. They are fascinating creatures. All of these lions are covered in scratches and injuries, and nevertheless, they are definitely looking far better. Let's just go and have a quick look at an animal that Brent has found in a completely opposite sphere of the one that we are talking about.
So we do have a bunch of little predators here, but reptilian predators. The serrated hinged terrapins. And there's actually quite a lot of them in this very small little puddle. There's obviously some form of food here. It could be mosquito larvae, which they're quite fond of. These guys are all little. They can get much, much bigger than that. You can see what's he up to. Looks like there might be frogs' eggs in the algae or something that they're feeding on. Now, they are quite ferocious little predators, capable of catching fast-swimming fish and tadpoles and even live frogs themselves. And in the rainy season, you often find them wandering down the road between different pans, especially if they're in a small little waterhole like this that's drying up. They'll utilize it to get as much food as possible before moving on to the next one. There we go. Off he goes. Feeling a little bit self-conscious. So we're going to continue on, see what else we can find, and in the meantime, let's go back to Jamie and the Birmingham boys.
Our lions lions are definitely extraordinary and exciting creatures, but they do occasionally, or they do spend most of their time resting and sleeping. I wanted to just go back to Mrs. Ridge's question. We can have a look at the injury between the one facing us, between his ear and his eye. That's just a small example of probably a wound obtained either in the buffalo hunt itself or whilst fighting off his brothers for his part or his access to the carcass. A bite wound like that, you can imagine all of the bacteria that is carried within the claws or within the saliva of a lion. And that's something that will not bother him in the slightest. And I've seen lions recover from really incredibly deep wounds. And in fact, I saw a lioness live for about a year with a broken leg. Every time we saw her, she managed to escape us before we could help her. Now, only the males have manes, this thick sort of tuft of hair around the back. And what that means for them is that they can overheat far easier than the females can. That being said, Johnny would like to know, why do lions have manes? Why do male lions have manes? Now, looking at that injury on his head, the life of a male lion is incredibly rough and tumble. They spend a lot of time defending their territory, fighting off other males, and in fact, at times, even fighting off members of their own coalition in order to have access to a kill or access to one of the females within their territory. So that big puffy mane acts as a really protective part that can protect the most vulnerable parts of their neck, as well as any part around their spine where their head joins their shoulders. That and the fact that studies have recently shown that male lions with a nice big dark attractive mane signal to the females that their genetic line is very strong, and it seems as though lionesses show something of a preference for lions with black and big dark manes. That's not always the case, though. Interestingly enough, females have shown a willingness to mate with any male that happens to be around when she comes into estrus, and that's a very clever system. Oh, look at that full belly. That's a very clever way of her being able to ensure that every lion in the area thinks that he is the father or related to the father, and therefore are less likely to kill her cubs in order to propagate their own genetic line. Now, Elena, just watching our lions flop down and snooze away. You were wondering, how long do lions rest for? Now, these boys have spent the last day and a half pretty much alternating between doing this and feeding on the buffalo carcass. That essentially means that they can spend up to 22 hours of the day in a prone position. That's not always the case, though. They will spend most of the hottest time of the day sleeping away in the shade, but on a cold day like today, they can be up and about even in the middle of the day, and I have seen lions on many occasions hunt on days where the temperatures are over 30 degrees centigrade, which equates to about 86 in Fahrenheit. But they have to be careful if they do that, because we discussed yesterday, with yesterday's class, the fact that a lion's body temperature cannot go up over about 1.5 degrees centigrade, so about 3 degrees Fahrenheit, before they start to suffer seriously ill effects. They do spend a great deal of their time sleeping, but they need to conserve their energy, make the use of the meal that they've managed to gain over the next 2 days in order to build up their strength, because their hunting techniques is the way in which they explode forward with incredible amounts of power. Plus, these boys will have to patrol their territories in order to make sure that they are keeping out any other males that might want to mate with the females within their territory. So these boys do actually expend a large amount of energy. It just happens to be a lot of it is at night, and a lot of it could be in one incident, for example, fighting off or scaring off other males. Now, we've got a coalition of 5 here, which is an exceptionally important. If we have a look over here, we've got 3 of them with us. Now, that's been of huge advantage to have 5 members in this coalition. We do have a question about whether or not they ever separate and move off on their own. And absolutely, these boys have a territory of close to, I would say, about 8,000 hectares, which is about 8,000 soccer fields that they have to patrol. So, Leia, you were wondering, do they ever go off on their own? Yes, they do. They're very common to see. Naya, you were wondering whether or not they ever go off on their own. Well, you can imagine, sometimes the company of your 4 other brothers or cousins gets to be a little bit too much, and by splitting up, they can cover more ground. With this particular group of 5, it seems as though they regularly split into a group of 2 and a group of 3. That seems to be their general approach to moving through an area. Lionesses, on the other hand, will only be off on their own if they are looking for a mate or if they are going off to give birth. Now, Ben, this must be an extraordinary thing to witness with us sitting probably about, I would estimate, 12 odd feet away from the lions between us. That's the space between us and them. You're wondering, how can we be that close without disturbing them? Ben, the only thing they did when I drove in here was to lift up their heads and then put them back down again. Now, in an area like this, every single animal that we see has been born and raised with safari vehicles coming to and from. So within the Sabi Sands itself, it has the most extraordinary history of tourism and conservation combined. And tourism for us in South Africa is such an essential tool in conservation, because it brings in the amounts of money that is needed to keep these animals protected in these enormous wilderness areas. So they've got incredibly used to vehicles coming and going during game drive times. And as long as we respect their personal space, and it's very clear when you might be intruding upon that, which we always try never to do, it is perfectly safe and comfortable for us to sit here. We're not on their menu in any way. Now, I am going to have to leave these lovely lions, but we've got one beautiful animal that is associated with Africa. Brent has found you another charismatic example of an incredible species.
So we've found a small breeding herd of elephants. Now, elephants can be quite nervous in this wind, like all the other animals, specifically when there's small babies around. So I'm just staying a little bit back and watching the body language, see if they're relaxed enough for us to approach a bit closer. They do look a little like they should be okay, but they are slowly moving towards quite a thick area. I will try and get a little bit closer now. So what we're looking for, one of the telltale signs of an elephant not being relaxed, is their tail. It's quite often the first thing. It starts to get semi-rigid, and it means they're not really happy with our presence. So if they show any of those signs, we'll leave them be, let them walk on, and continue with whatever they were doing. Okay, you can already see they're not very relaxed. We're not going to go any closer. You can just see even see the tail. There we go. Watch, the tail slightly rigid. So they're not angry yet. They're just slightly uncomfortable. So when you do see stuff like that, it is always best to leave them alone. And I'm quite sure hopefully there'll be some other elephants around, but I did spot something very interesting. Since you are a biology class, I think you will find it absolutely fascinating. So one of my favorite things out in the bush, apart from, of course, all the big hairies and scaries, is the wild flowers. And after a bit of rain, we've got a lot of wild flowers. So I saw a particularly nice one just over here somewhere. There we go. So while I find this flower, let's jump across to Jamie quickly. Okay, hold it.
Here we go. The lion, one of the other male lions, dozing away in the background behind the leaves. Now, before I leave, in order to give the vehicles a turn at these lions, I just wanted to show you, and it is a gruesome sight, but that is all that is left of an adult female buffalo carcass. That is what happens when 5 male lions go to work with enormous appetites. All that is left is the rib cage, and already they've chewed off the ends of part of the rib cage. The white bulk that you can see sort of hanging out is a combination of part of the leg and the stomach contents draped over the top of it. So the connective tissue around the intestines and the stomach. And that is the one part of the buffalo that the lions do not find particularly appetizing. In general, they will pull the stomach out first and eat around it. They're going to go for the liver, the heart, the kidneys, and the lungs. Those are the organs with the most nutritional value. And they've made short work of that. I think that by tomorrow morning, these males will be off on a different mission. Here's the rest of the stomach contents, Dave. Thank you. You can see all of the dried grass that was the buffalo's last meal, as well as the remainder of her stomach on the right there. But she will not go to waste. Once the lions have left, the hyenas will be in to take their place. Time for us to leave and go out and find you other things. And I think that Brent has actually found you something far prettier than a buffalo carcass. So let's have a look at that.
So there we go. I managed to get this flower. It's called an Aldenlandia. And you can see very distinct star-shaped little flowers. But the really interesting thing about this particular flower is it is a heliotrope. Now, for those of you at home, one of the biggest cash crops that is a flower is a heliotrope. And what a heliotrope means is, as the sun moves through the sky, these flowers will actually just turn slightly and follow the sun throughout the day to get the most sun possible. And the most well-known heliotrope, and one you guys have probably eaten a few times, or definitely used its oil before, is a sunflower. So sunflower is probably the biggest of the heliotropes, but there are quite a few species that do that. So a nice little interesting flower for you guys. Now, flowers are fascinating. Lots of them have medicinal uses and all sorts of things. That one doesn't. So we just saw those eddies disappearing, and Johnny would like to know, how big does an elephant get? So a very big elephant bull in this area, Johnny, will normally weigh around 6,000 kilograms or 6 tons, and an elephant cow around 3 tons. Now, the largest recorded elephant ever was from southern Angola, and that weighed 9,000 kilograms. Isn't that incredible? So those elephants weigh more than our safari vehicle, even the ladies. So Grace and Mrs. Ridge would like to know, would we assist if an animal got hurt? We would not. Jean-Dre, I think, has spotted those elephants. They are still moving through the bush. So what I will try to do, I will answer your question now. I don't think we're going to get a view. We're just going to make it out through the thickets there. But they are moving parallel to us. So I'm going to go wait up ahead, and hopefully they'll pop out into an open spot. And while we get there, so Grace and Mrs. Ridge asked, would we help an animal? Generally, no. This is a wild area. We let nature take its course. And there's the apex predator of the skies. He's dipping. We've seen the apex predator of the land, and in this area, that's the apex predator of the skies. That is a martial eagle. He's got a wingspan of about 2 meters. Let's see. Unfortunately, tipped off. And they feed off even small antelope, like baby impala, and monkeys, baboons, lizards, or anything that they can catch. So as I was saying, we don't generally help an animal. There are very unique circumstances when we would interfere. That would be if the animal was hurt directly by human beings. So for example, if an elephant happened to get hit by a big truck or something, which is very unlikely, but let's just use that as an example, then yes, we would probably intervene, call in a vet. But if an elephant got hurt by another elephant in a fight, and even if it was very sick and skinny and the wound was infected, we would not interfere. That is nature taking its course. That is nature controlling their numbers, and so we wouldn't at all. There are some specific species that we do intervene with, and that is endangered species, and a lot of these species are endangered from human interference. And the two particular species that are most commonly used for would be interfered with is wild dog and cheetah. What is that coming off the ground? Here we go. I just saw a bird of prey. Where's it gone? And came off the... there we go. John and I spotted this eagle, and from this distance it looks to be a tawny eagle. There we go, there's a gap for you. So not quite as big as the Marshall eagle we just saw, but also one of the bigger eagle species we get here. Very beautiful bird. So it might have caught something. They catch everything from little hares, rodents, ground nesting birds, mice, rats, squirrels. Very beautiful. So they're not too big a fan of this weather as well. It makes it very difficult for them because a lot of the small critters that they like to eat are not as active. So we do have a question there. Is it possible for civilians to go on these safari tours? And it is most definitely. And that is from Mrs. Ridge. So there are commercial safari lodges who will take you on tours. So you'll have a professional guide like Jamie or myself who will sit there and take a group of tourists on a safari to have a look at all nature's wonder. So those eddies were moving towards this spot, but I don't think they're quite here yet. So one of the ways to try find elephants is you actually try listen, and you'd be amazed at how quiet they are. Now, the reason they can be so quiet is they've got a really interesting shaped foot. So their feet are basically, they've got toes, just like everyone else, even though you can't see them. Their foot's basically like this. And this inside, there's a big cartilaginous sponge almost. So it's a big spongy thing that can absorb all the weight. So imagine like a massive shock absorber inside the elephant's foot that enables them to sometimes walk so quietly they sneak up on you. But when they're out feeding and spread out, you do hear them, the branches breaking, and they communicate in very low decibel rumbles that can be heard for about 10 kilometers. And it sounds something like this. I can hear our ellies, but Jamie has got one up on me and found ellies that are out in the open, not in the thicket.
I hear that Brent's been chatting about how silent an elephant herd can be. So silent, in fact, that these guys nearly snuck up on me completely. Now, that tree that she is currently eating has thorns that are easily 3 inches long and exceptionally solid. For us, it is known as a flat tire tree, given the number of times people have had to, or had their tires punctured by those sickle bush thorns in the road. Now, just like Brent's elephants, this female is showing signs of, a little bit of signs of stress, not with us per se. Do you see how there's liquid running down her temporal gland, or from her temporal gland, between her eye and her ear? Now, that can be, in females, a sign of agitation. There is evidence to show that it can also, in certain circumstances, be a sign of happiness as well. So it's more just a heightened emotion evidence more than anything else. And Carson, in terms of whether or not I've ever been attacked by any of the animals out here, I've had a couple of close encounters. I would not call them attacks. I've had moments where the animals got a bit of a fright, I've got a bit of a fright, and fortunately we were able to negotiate our way out of it by shouting at the animal concerned. Not something I like doing. I've spent a lot of time on foot in the bush, which is always a sort of a time where you are the most cautious that you can possibly be out here. It's important to remember that we are in the animal's home, and it is up to us to respect their personal space, which is why we won't be following this particular elephant herd. We'll let them move off at their own pace. And we have come all of a sudden to the end of Mrs. Ridge's class lesson. I hope you had a wonderful time with us. I hope that it has inspired you to continue watching our show. This continues on for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. So hopefully when you go home, you might have a glance at our show. Either way, I hope to see you all on the back of the vehicle with us. It's, as always, a privilege to have you. Have a wonderful rest of your school day, and maybe we'll see you later. Cheers. Alrighty, well, I heard a squirrel alarm calling up the tree somewhere. I'm going to see if we can't work out which particular threat it is responding to. It could well be an eagle, could be a snake, and it could well be a leopard. We just don't know. It didn't sound to me, not that I in any way interpret squirrel alarm calls in the same way the great tracking master Renius does. It didn't sound to me like a leopard alarm call. It actually almost sounded to me like an angry squirrel shouting at another squirrel. Somewhere off in the trees to my left. Quiet now. That to me suggests it was just a squirrel making a noise. I was hoping that elephant herd might be heading towards Arathusa Dam for a drink. It doesn't look as though they are, though. It looks as though they're moving back in towards the middle of the block. Now, Joyce, we were with the Birmingham boys a little bit earlier. Joyce is watching all the way in New Hampshire and would like to know if the emaciated lion that we saw yesterday was still with them. The emaciated lion being Scrapper or Tokolosh or Tsotsi, depending on who you ask what his particular name is. Joyce, he is there. I didn't get the best view of him. He's thin. He's not the worst condition I've ever seen, but he is looking uncomfortably thin, but I think he is very much on the mend. So that healthy meal of a 2-day buffalo will go a long way in sorting him out, and I think that you will find I'm definitely not concerned about him. I feel bad for him being in the condition that he is in, but I'm not concerned that it is in any way something we need to worry too much about. I think that he will start putting on weight very soon. Nevertheless, nice to see that he has had a meal and that he's still there with the rest of the Birmingham boys. Diane, I know that we were sort of restricted in terms of where we could go in that particular sighting, and one of the reasons behind that is this is quite a sensitive area in terms of driving off-road. So we don't want to sort of try and drive around the different bushes and add to the off-road tracks that are there, especially since multiple vehicles will be coming backwards and forwards from that sighting. That being said, you were wondering, were there 5 Birmingham boys there or only 4? There were 5. The 5th was quite far in the back behind all of them, lying up underneath a tree. He was just behind Scrapper. So he was there, all 5 still there. And I think you'll probably find, given the amount of meat that's left on the buffalo, that and the fact that the Birmingham boys are renowned for abandoning their kills when they are not quite finished. And I think that you'll probably find they'll be gone and split up by tomorrow. And it just remains to be seen which way they're going to decide to go. I'm still convinced, well, I'm no longer convinced about anything because Karula just made an appearance at Buffelshoek outside north of our boundary. We've lost our biggest animal that we could see out here. They've all moved off into a very thick block. And Carol was wondering a little bit about what sort of scale one would use to go about weighing an ellie. And I'm going to refrain from saying a very big one, but what they do when weighing elephants very often is they have a crane on the back of a truck with a scale attached to it, an industrial weight scale, and a sling around an elephant's belly. So that is probably what they would go about measuring an elephant with, and only ever if it is an anesthetized elephant. I would not be brave enough to ask an elephant cow if she would mind stepping on your average bathroom scale. I can't get rid of that image now of an elephant standing on a bathroom scale. It's something quite bizarre in my head. But real elephants have curves, so I think that elephants would be perfectly comfortable with any kind of weight they might exhibit. I'm just having a look at this water here. This is the first time I've actually noticed it. Interesting to see how much rain has spread through Arethusa. Arethusa is a giant seep line, or at least a lot of Arethusa is a giant seep line. This is where the waters are pooling around the corners of the creek systems. And this probably, you find this was probably flowing when we had those big rains, flowing all the way from this thick vegetation across the road through stormwater pipes and down into this drainage line system, which is very close to where Shadow is rumored to be sheltering her cubs. It would have been incredibly interesting to be here to see it. Ooh, windy. It's okay. You're gonna be okay. Let us go investigate and see what is happening around the Arethusa Dam. Yesterday when I popped in there with Liam, there weren't any hippos there, any hippos left, but it's definitely filled up nicely compared to what it was looking at before the rains about 10 days ago. Oh! Beware of flying sticks underneath the car wheel. It's so amazing how the vegetation has filled out. Being able to, I mean, 2 weeks ago, we could see 50 meters into the bush in almost every direction. Now we can barely see 10 or 15. I'm going to continue on towards the Arethusa Dam. Let's find out what Brent's plans are for the rest of his afternoon.
So I heard Jamie just told you about Karula being in Buffelshoek, and I had a word with Taxon and asked him to keep an ear out and let me know whether she starts heading back to the south or the west. So fingers crossed. We actually saw her tracks now, so her tracks come out of that same block we were tracking her in this morning, and she's walked straight past Vuyatela. Those who might have been on the dam cam would have heard, I think it was around between 10 and 11 o'clock this morning, all the monkeys going bananas. And Jamie and I stood on our deck, and I bet that's Karula just to spite us after this morning. And it turns out it was. But if she's gone there, and she's going back to that little drainage system, fingers crossed she may have moved her den site back to Djuma. No confirmation yet, so let's not count our cubs before they have appeared, but it is very, very good news. And we are fast approaching that sort of 2-month age where we'll be able to start viewing them. So very exciting, and I'm just ecstatic to spend some time with leopard cubs in the coming months. For some reason it seems to be getting colder as the evening progresses. Wind has not really died down at all today, hence how nervous all the prey species are. Jumpy Nyala, jumpy Impala. So we just did a bit of a loop. We're going to head back to where those ellies were, and hopefully they pop out on the road. So Seabird says lions must have such a different digestive system to not get worms when they eat that rotting meat. Well, Seabird, lions are literally full of worms. Tapeworms, fluke worms, liver flukes, and that's one of the reasons you never ever touch carnivore dung. The worms will happily migrate into your digestive tract, so very important to be very careful when touching carnivore dung and deworm regularly when living out in the bush. Darlene in New Hampshire would like to know, do I think that elephants can pick up on seismic cues from a distressed herd being chased by a predator to figure if there's a predator nearby? Wow, Darlene, I personally don't think so, but still, I heard them trumpeting they've crossed the drainage system, so I'm going to go back and sidle across there onto Ingwe Alley. So, Darlene, I think their biggest sense in terms of picking up predators would be their smell. You must remember, sometimes zebra will stampede for joy, or they'll be fighting. So that would probably, from a seismic point of view, feel the same as being chased by a predator. So hopefully, or not hopefully, so I think their sense of smell would be the strongest.
Do you know if any Luma vehicles are on the
So I heard the Ellies down here.
Yeah, myself and Mark just looking into that
No problem, you go ahead.
I just got to be on the radio for a second. Mark, there's a breeding out of Ellies on that little 2-track that runs from Philemon's Dip through to Twin Dams.
No problem at all, you carry on. I'll go later on. I'm just on bubble, so you carry on.
So there we go. I thought those Ellies were around here. I'm just trying to let Mark know. Mark, there's a breeding out of Ellies on the 2-track that runs between Philemon's Dip and Twin Dams.
Thanks, Brent. Appreciate that.
So I would have said it sounds like anywhere from here forward. It is difficult to listen properly with this wind bustling about. Let's see if Jean-Ray's eagle eyes will spot them again from his camera perch. So Valeria in Massachusetts would like to know, since I was the first to find Karula's cubs, will I also be the first from Wild Earth to view them when it is deemed appropriate? Valeria, I wish it worked that way. No, whoever actually is out on the day and happens to find her or find where the den is will be able to view them. So we're not going to say I have to, although I think that would be a very good rule. But no, it'll be whoever's out. Okay, so I think those eddies might be still in these thick drainage systems here. So I'm going to do another loop around this block. I'm just going to keep quiet and listen for a second.
Yeah, I'm approaching.
Here we go. I just heard a branch break. So they actually seem like they're in the little creek or little dry river system. So we'll just loop on around.
Okay, but then, like I checked, running down
So, leopard tuned in a little bit late, and we have been chatting about Karula and her cubs. So, she hasn't been seen near her last den site on Little Gowrie for about 3 days and no tracks. And we've had tracks of her for now 3 days on Djuma. So, I think she might have moved her den back onto Djuma. We can only hope. And she is fast getting close, or the cubs are fast getting close to that 2-month age where we are going to be able to start viewing them. So I said I'm very excited about that. She has been found already, this sunset safari, just north of our boundary in Buffels Hook. And I've asked the guys who are there to keep an eye out for me in case she starts heading back towards Djuma. Now, remember we've seen impala and we've seen everything being very tightly bunched, and very jumpy. And there we go, these zebras were almost standing in a huddle. So this windy weather, where it's easy for predators to approach because their sounds are masked by the wind as well as their scent, because of this particular wind is very much swirling all around.
Is it more open there where she's going now? Still fixed up.
So you can see there, taking advantage of that lovely green flush. And that is the stallion Jean-Andre's got shot in the moment. So zebra harems have very interesting, different social behaviors. So when they're on the move, not when they're feeding like this, the oldest, most experienced female will be in the front leading the herd and moving down in hierarchy towards the end, and then the stallion will actually be right on the end. And if the wrong female starts leading the herd, the stallion will literally bite, nip, and chase to get the rest of the harem in the right order. Oh, let's just try and move a little bit back so we can get another nice view of them. Say when? There we go. So staying in tight, net little groups with the wind. Such a beautiful coat. And yeah, that very unmelodious call of the grey go-away bird up above. Ooh, ooh, ears back. So those of you who know horses, when you see ears back, you're normally in for a bit of trouble. Some nipping, kicking possibly. Nice distinct little almost Y on that zebra's bottom. There's that Y on that mare's bottom. And you can see how none of the stripes are exactly the same. Cat in Tampa says, wow, what a drive so far. Male lions, elephants, zebra, impala, reptiles, birds of prey, wild flowers. It's all happening out here at Djuma. Well, thanks very much, Kat. We do try our best. So zebras look like they're going to move off into some slightly thicker bush. So we're going to leave them be, see if we can catch up with those ellies again. Leopard is wondering, why do you often see zebra and wildebeest together? Now, this is a very interesting association, and the main reason is because they don't compete for the same food. So wildebeest is a very finicky feeder, so it only likes very short grass and only certain grass species, where zebras are bulk feeders. So the zebras just munch, and they keep a lot of those species of grass that the wildebeest really like very, very short. So the wildebeest can then go pick and choose what they want to eat after the zebras have passed through. There are other reasons, of course. The more eyes, more ears, less chance of being, or more chance of spotting a predator, and also the more numbers, the less chance of being eaten. Sorry, I'm just going to listen to this quickly, guys. Just making sure that the queen hasn't done a loop-de-loop and is on her way back towards Djuma, which she often does. We go see if we can catch up with those ellies. Let's go see what's happening on Arathusa.
It's amazing to see how quiet it is here at the moment. It's a product of, I think, this windy, cool weather. Most of the animals have somewhat gone to ground, if I could describe it like that. It was interesting to pay a quick trip, though, to Arathusa Dam. It's looking nice and full. Just a couple of Egyptian geese and one fish eagle that flew away as soon as we got there. It was accompanied by the dulcet tones of some camp work, a little bit of lawn mowing happening there. So we decided to make haste away and see what other animals we can find for you. Quite a nice view of the puffed up starling and the puffed up go-away birds sitting on the dead tree. All of the birds chirping away happily this afternoon, but nevertheless looking a bit chilly. I'm sure that they are very relieved that the constant wind that we've had since yesterday afternoon has finally given it a rest, so to speak. Oh, look, joined by fork-tailed drongos at the bottom there as well. You see, that's a really pleasant tree for them to be sitting on. Go down a little bit. Here's the fork-tailed drongos. Oh, that was the starling swooping off. I think we've just happened to have stumbled upon a bird feeding party. Now, fork-tailed drongos are probably one of my favorite little birds. We take them so for granted. We see them all the time. Now, watching the birds flutter about and feed and sound fairly excited at the number of insects and the seeding grasses, Zumi Mike was wondering, has there been enough rain late in the growth season, or has there been enough growth in this late growth season with the late rain to last us through the dry season? And the answer to that, Zumi Mike, is no. We're still going to suffer the effects of the drought. What we've done is we've sort of, the rain has put it off, or the effects off, for the next couple of months. But nevertheless, it is something that is going to have a tremendous impact. So although we're seeing grass, and it is lovely to see the grass, it's not really the same amount that we would have been seeing usually at this time of year. And as we've said before, it's probably the worst drought in about the last 100 or so years. So whilst it has staved off the effects, the dams, I would guess, will be empty by about end of May, maybe a little bit later if we get any more late rain. But I would say the end of May will be when the water starts to run out. But it's not going to be the lack of water that's going to be the biggest problem. It's really going to be the lack of food. For a bulk grazer, there's just not quite enough out here. But most of them will survive. It will only be the weak the weaker individuals and the older individuals that will suffer the worst effects. And with every side of, or with everything out here, there's two sides of that coin. The predators and the scavengers are going to have the best time of their lives over the last few hundred years. I just need to move out of the way of another vehicle who would very much like to come past. Now, there's a really interesting question from Ellen in Arkansas about Karula. Now, you might have heard me briefly touch on the fact, and I'm not sure if whether Brent has mentioned it or not. I'm just going to say a quick hello. Hi, guys. Bye. The fact that Karula emerged on just outside one of the landowners' lodges up on Buffelshoek, which is incredible because we were tracking her this morning and we were not far behind her. But Ellen in Arkansas was wondering, because we suspect she might have moved her cubs back towards Juma. Ellen was wondering, will she reuse a den site if she thinks that it's a suitable one? Maybe, quite possibly, but I don't think so. I think she's got lots of different den sites in mind, and she's just going to keep the risk of any other predator finding them to an absolute minimum. As with anything, the longer a little living animal lives in a certain place, the more their scent will build up around that place. So she'll want to make sure that she keeps moving them regularly, along with wherever she wants to be, and also wherever she happens to make a kill. If she makes a particularly large kill that is very far away, she'll drag it up. If she drags it up into a tree, she'll go back and move the cubs not to the kill itself, but she'll move them a little bit closer so that she's able to move between the two. Now, she could reuse her den sites, but not in the same way that spotted hyenas do. She might reuse, she definitely have den sites in mind from previous litters of cubs that she's had, that she will return to if she finds herself in that area. Now, at the moment, I'm on northern Safari Donga, making my way back towards Vuyatela, towards Juma, just dodging some of the other vehicles in the area, making sure that we check different roads as we go along. It's that system of drainage line that runs on the eastern side of the Arathusa Dam. Now, Shadow is rumoured to be denning her cubs in this area, not this drainage line that I'm at now, on the southern side, so on the other side of the drainage lines. Wow, look at this. It's a positive, veritable water hole. Look at all that water in this drainage line. Well, that's a first for me. This was completely dry when I first started working here. And it's actually flowing. It's a river system almost that is flowing. It's dammed up against the road and the tree mulch. But if we have a look on the other side, I've always looked and been fascinated by this drainage line, but this is such a pretty little setting. Underneath the leaves of a boerbean, large green boerbean tree. Positively idyllic. And if we have a look here on this side, you can actually see the water flowing out a bit and further down the drainage line. That's very nice. Now, this is the sort of thing that we should have been seeing if this year had been a normal rainfall year. Now, something nice to note. I'm going to stop and have a look at the different ones, but the grasses have all got their inflorescences growing for the first time that I've seen properly this year. I've seen one or two, and what I mean by that is their reproductive or seeding parts. I've seen a couple of love grass that have been seeding, and some Natal part the grasses have been relatively reluctant, or probably more like better phrased as being unable to produce enough or to get enough nutrients in order to produce those reproductive parts of them. So that's also one aspect of this rain that we've had over the last few days that is really nice to see. Now you'll have to forgive me for the moment, just going through this dip. It has a tendency to cut out our radio comms when we're down low, but I do know I asked a question about whether or not I will go anywhere in terms of helping endangered predators to increase their numbers, or whether we'll see any increase in their numbers. Now that's a really good point, and it's a really interesting way of looking at it. I'm going to hazard at saying yes. When we talk very much about the endangered predators, in this specific area we'll be talking about wild dogs and cheetah. Leopards, although their numbers could be considered to be endangered in certain areas, they're definitely not considered endangered here. Lions are this is the highest, or very close to an area that has the highest concentration of lions in the world. So we won't count them as endangered predators, but cheetah and wild dog most definitely are. And that's a bit different, because they're not going to be able to lurk around the waterholes in the way that lions and leopards are going to do. And that's one of the reasons why we always talk about the drought being positive things for the predators, because it concentrates the game around waterholes, and there are lots of things dying. Cheetah are quite picky about the meals that they choose, so they might. Cheetah are quite picky about the meals that they choose, and therefore might not scavenge as much as, and I personally have never seen a cheetah scavenge off a carcass. So they might not scavenge on the carcasses of animals falling that have died of the drought causes. And wild dog, nobody actually knows why their numbers have decreased in the ways that they have. There's a lot of theories about various diseases spreading through them, the possibility of canine distemper, and maybe an overpopulation with lions. But it's a bit more complex than the drought just helping out the endangered predators. So I'm going to think about that question for a bit longer and make my way across to Juma while I do some serious thinking. Let's find out what Brent is up to.
So, welcome back. I found a very noisy bird. It just stopped calling, but when we're close up to them, you can actually see how pretty they are. We have the Natal Franklin here, and it's a little pair, and I'm trying to see, where's the other one? So that is the female from what I can see, and then there is the male. Now, the only real way to tell the difference is if you look at his feet. You see those two real sharp spurs sticking out the back of his legs, and those are used for fighting, and they're actually really, really strong. Oh, he's cleaned his beak there quickly. So, Natal Franklin. Oh, peck, peck, peck. So they'll eat insects as well as grass seeds. So this is our second most common Franklin species we get here on Juma. The most common being the crested. And then probably
Brent, you'll see right
Koki.
opposite Tamboti Dam on your side. There's I'm not sure if it's Slampy and Nyari or just the number of other boys.
Copy, thanks very much, yours. So, another little bit of an exciting adventure we're off on now. Aubrey has just let me know that there are male leopard tracks around. So, and they were heading east down the fire break. So Aubrey's coming from the west, and I'm going to loop around the front and come in from the east, and Jorst is checking the north. So hopefully between the three of us we are able to relocate. Now, Jen in Minnesota asked a very interesting question about the drought. Would a drought help the endangered species such as wild dog, or particular predators, such as wild dog and cheetah, bounce back from being endangered? It would have to be a very long drought. There will be some increase, but it doesn't really help them too much, because the dominant predators are the ones that'll do a lot of the increasing. So in particular, droughts really aid lion and hyena. Their numbers increase in certain circumstances up to about 20% during a prolonged dry period. So it doesn't, and those lion and hyena are the two biggest threats from a natural predator point of view to cheetah and wild dog. So in a way, it will help, it will make prey species easier to catch, but also their biggest danger will be increased by the lions and hyenas increasing. So it probably evens themselves out there. So I think we're still quite a long way from getting those two animals off the endangered list. Hello, little duiker. Running duiker. Just gapping it across the open area. Oh, Genre in the road. A bird we haven't actually looked at for a while. One of our more common species, the African hoopoe. You can see it's a very specially designed, thin, curved beak for probing into the ground. I think we got a snake, Chandra. Listen to those birds. Okay, let's just go have a quick look. I think there's a snake there. Those birds are alarming like crazy. So let's just check in this thicket carefully. The babblers are most upset. I can see it, I think. No, that was just... So starlings and babblers, and they're not flying off, even though we're very close to them. So I'm probably about 90% sure that there is a snake in this little thicket. Now, let's hopefully the birds show us exactly where it is. So, yes, he does look like quite an angry babbler. You must watch, because the babblers will often dive bomb a snake and peck it. So there's a babbler below that one that's right in the center of this thicket, and I think that's the one who's closest to the potential snake. Of course, in a thicket like this, we might not be able to see the snake, but I'm very sure there is one. And that alarm calling was very, very aggressive and multiple species alarm calling. So it's unlikely to be something like a slender mongoose. It is very likely to be a snake. So what we're looking for now is basically a moving branch, because if it's a vine snake, it'll be the exact same color as those branches. So there's another babbler hopping around in the back there. Come on, guys, attack it. So far, I can only see babblers. As I said, it is quite difficult. You can see how thick this fallen down buffalo thorn is, and the babblers look like they're decided, whatever it is, they've seen it off enough. I'm going to reverse very slowly, just try and pick up a bit of movement. Also, here comes the rain. I think we're going to have to put our covers on. Just one last look into this.
Are you following this?
Well, one of a snake's best defenses is to keep dead still. Okay, so Jamie is putting her rain covers on, and it is on its way, and it's coming along a lot faster than I expected. Eddie says, what type of bird was that? What type of Franklin was that? It's not on my Kruger bird app. It should be under Natal Franklin or Natal Spur file. Have a look. I'll show you now. And I'll see which one it is, because I think the names should add up. Let me just have a... Okay, so while we look for this bird quickly, Jean-Andre's just going to jump down and grab the virtual reality rig so it doesn't get wet. So, and there we go. Now I'm going to try be my own cameraman, so I do apologize. And there we go, we're onto it there. And there we go. It'll be called a Natal Spur file on your app, probably. Here we go. Jean-Andre is back. We'll, if I move it any closer, unfortunately, it'll become out of focus. So Jean-Andre is back, so he'll zoom in for you there. And where's my... Why are we not hearing him? I don't know what's going on. Play the sound machine. Well, this looks like sometime technology lets you down, but there it is. Very pretty spur file. Okay, let's have a look. We are causing a slight traffic jam, so let's move on, and I will... Okay, so we're going to have a quick rush to put our rain covers on. And while we do that, let's jump on board with Jamie.
We've just put on our rain covers as well. It seems as though finally, after a good over 24 hours of threatening, the sky is thinking about opening up on us. I can't quite decide if this is going to be an actual downpour or just the odd drop spitting on us. I'm trying to work out exactly where it's coming from. I think that it's coming from Brent's side, so he might be experiencing harder rain than we are. For now, though, all is fine. And we're on our way towards Red Dam, so I can show you what that looks like as well. I popped by there the other day, and there's an enormous amount of water in Red Dam, which is quite exciting to see as well. Just turning my Game Drive channel down underneath the rain covers. Oh, there's a little bit of drizzle coming down. Everywhere I go, I'm seeing more and more work on these termite mounds. The termites are loving the rain at the moment. Look at all of this fresh dirt that they've layered on this mound. Very impressive. They've been industrious little creatures over the last 2 days, and we're seeing so much fresh building work because the days are cool and cloudy, which means that the workers can work at all hours of the day. They haven't joined any unions, so they're quite happy, quite prepared to work for as long as possible when the weather is cool like this. No unions in the termite world. Now, speaking about rain and the effect that it has, Kat in Tampa was wondering whether or not it's ever rained so much to the point that the roads get flooded or the drainage lines can't get rid of all of the rain. And Kat, yes, absolutely. And in fact, over the last few days, we haven't necessarily touched upon it, but after the big downpours of rain, there are certain roads that we don't drive at all. We don't necessarily mention it to you guys, but for example, Nyala Road South was fairly undrivable after that big rain, as was Mvubu Road. Now, we did a trip along Mvubu Road after it had dried up nicely, and we saw where all of the elephant damage, they'd basically not damaged, but they'd started building a mud pan already right in the middle of the road, so the road now has to go around that. So absolutely, it can rain to the point that roads become flooded. Certain soil types hold the water for longer than others. So a road like the one we're on at the moment would probably be absolutely fine. It's very sandy, very loose soil. So the water can flow down into the underground water systems and then move from there. But if we get to somewhere like Nyala Road or Mvubu Road, with a very thick, very clay-like soil, so a different consistency, quite often with a base of basalt or rhyolite that's broken down, that's what gives rise to that those are types of rock, by the way, for those of you unfamiliar with geography or rocks. And that can it can bog you down. Oopsie daisy. We were going to go to Red Dam. We are no longer going to go to Red Dam. We are going to leave Red Dam for now. I've accidentally bumped a sighting. I didn't realize was there. We're going to move on. So yes, absolutely the roads can get flooded and the drainage lines can be uncrossable. Now, Iggy was wondering about the nearest constantly flowing river to Djuma. That's an interesting question because with this particular year, most of our constantly flowing rivers that should be flowing all year round have actually nearly dried up. I was shocked when I went to Oliphant's camp in the Kruger Park, which now looks completely different, but at the time there was barely a trickle flowing along. So I'm trying to think of our nearest permanently flowing river. The Oliphants is definitely one of them. Further to the south, in the Sabi Sands, the Sabi River is probably our closest one. The Sabi Rivers, they've experienced a little bit more rain to the further south, so that's been flowing the whole time through this drought and is now actually almost at flooding point. Many of you will have seen the pictures from the Kruger National Park itself with roads that are completely, when there was that downpour, that were completely uncrossable due to the amount of water flowing along those rivers. The Sabi River, one of the biggest rivers in the Sabi Sands. Makes sense. The name seems relatively self-explanatory. It's a beautiful river. Having been there, rocks and pools and the most extraordinary big trees. Definitely one of my favorite rivers to drive close to or drive along. The Sand River is also usually flows. And that's also a very, very attractive river. And when we were in Kruger, just chatting now generally, not the closest river, but just chatting about rivers generally, Brent and myself went all the way up to the north around the Levuvu River, which flows into the Limpopo. Now the Limpopo, the great grey, green, greasy Limpopo of legends, the division between South Africa, Botswana and Zimbabwe, it's always been considered to be one of our largest rivers, and it was essentially in places completely dry and in others just a couple of large pools that were left. But the Levuvu was flowing strongly with the most extraordinary large jackalberry and leadwood and inyana trees. Bob has sent through a thank you for a sighting that we experienced this morning. Bob, you really don't have to thank me. I found it as fascinating as you did. For those of you who missed this sunrise, oh, Bob, sorry, Bob, not Bob, Barb. The comms will get clearer as we get closer towards Djuma. Sorry, Bob. Didn't mean to call you Bob by mistake. Bob and Barb can sound similar, especially when spoken in a South African accent. Barb, the sighting was an absolute pleasure. For those of you who missed the sunrise safari, it was a sighting of a male dung beetle, and we watched it from essentially start until the action was over. That was rolling a very large dung ball, just smaller than a tennis ball, with a female on it. And he got to the side of the road and decided that this was where he wanted to be. This is where he wanted to dig the dung ball down. And we watched him, I don't know how long it was. Time flies when you're watching something like that. It was probably close to about 45 minutes that we sat there and watched this. watched him dig down underneath the soil, but it was so fascinating to see how instead of digging a hole and then rolling the ball into it, which for some reason is what I always imagined that they did, he dug underneath the ball so that he disappeared from view eventually, and all we could see were just mounds of dirt being pushed out. It was absolutely fascinating, and one of our viewers actually picked up on the fact that he did it in a perfect clockwise pattern. So he dug constantly, but he'd dig there, then 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 he'd start again, clockwise, which I would not, I sort of imagined that it would be a haphazard process that they would follow. And the whole time the female sat like Lady Muck on top, doing very little in the way, well, it looked like she was doing very little in helping him, but I actually think she probably was, she was using her front feet to compact the ball. It sounds as though Brent's got something interesting. Let's have a look.
So we have a lone wildebeest bull who's going to be defending his little patch, waiting for the females that should be moving through for the rut in May. So impala, wildebeest, and strangely enough, warthog will be the guys competing for ladies in the next month or two. And we are now in that area. So those leopard
And you're back again on back of our vehicle. We were chatting about, before we got interrupted by a galloping wildebeest, we were busy talking about the, the dung beetle. The fascinating sighting of this dung beetle. And I said it looked as though the female was doing very little. But I think what she was actually doing was gathering the soil that he'd loosened up and dug up and patting it down around the outside of the dung ball. Now, whenever I've found dung beetle balls that have been dug up and opened up, usually by honey badgers, the dung ball is surrounded by a layer, and if the dung ball is about this big, it's surrounded by almost half of that in soil, in compacted soil around it. And I wonder if that wasn't what she was up to, was sort of securing it for her youngsters. I've been trying to do some research, and I will continue to do some research as to whether or not, because towards the end they both disappeared underground and the soil layer was completely on top, and it was at that point that I left because all of the action was over and there was no movement from the two of them. And I assume that is when she is actually underneath laying her eggs, but I don't know for absolute certain. It was most definitely, however, a fascinating sighting. And sitting and watching something like that, whilst it might not be a lion and it might not be a leopard, is nevertheless fascinating just due to all that you can learn about the different little species out here. It's one of the things that I find most interesting. There's so much to learn, you just have to stop and look at it. Even with an impala, we see them all the time. But to really sit and watch them and to watch the way that their behavior has changed, and that is, I think, one of the biggest draw cards of these live safaris, is you watch things change in the bush year in and year out, and this year will be different to all the other years, and the same in certain respects. The impala going into their rut, the hormone levels starting to cause disruption within their lives, even for these young 2-year-old rams. And I can tell they're about 2 years old, judging by the size of their horn growth. And that's something that a lot of our regular viewers watching over the years will have learned to observe automatically because they're watching them year in, year out. We know now what the horns of the newborn youngsters look like. We've seen the speed at which they grow, and that gives us a rough age for a youngster like this. Now, unfortunately for him, his levels are going to go flying through the roof. But with tiny horns and a tiny body size like that, it's going to be another year or two, probably closer to 2, before he has an opportunity to compete with the larger rams for access to the females. And unless he's particularly sneaky, he's just going to have to exercise off his hormones by play fighting and sparring with the other young males in the bachelor groups. Now, at the moment, we've got enormous herds of impala gathering together. Just over the last 2 weeks, we've seen herds of up to 50, 60 individuals, if not more, depending on who's hiding behind the bushes. And they're gathering together in large sort of mixtures of males and females, but the males are starting to chase each other around, and soon we're going to see more and more bachelor herds, just like the one we've passed through, most of them hiding off in that thick vegetation. But we are going to see more bachelor groups as we go along. And those are the sort of things that you can look out for. If you're joining us, if you're jumping on the back of these safaris for the first time, or it's your first few weeks of watching them, little observations like that, the way that the impala's behavior has changed, the way in which the bush has changed since the rain, can give you all kinds of a deeper understanding into the life out here. And Arabo, absolutely. It's amazing what a little bit of rain has done, and it has come just in time as well. It's completely changed the landscape. It's like we're driving through a different place as we drive along. The tree foliage is thickened up. As you said, the grass has sprouted. 2 weeks ago, just this little patch of land and this clearing was essentially almost desert-like in appearance. There was hardly any grass. And now look at this layer that is blanketing the earth. It's not as tall as it should be. This grass should be, at this stage of the year, probably up to about my waist. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but at least up to above my knees. And not quite where it should be, but nevertheless, something very pleasant for us to stop and have a look at. What's interesting about this area, and I've only just really picked it up, and I don't know if I'm only just registering it now. Magpie shrike flying away. Oh, there's one in the weeping wattle. Those magpie shrikes, can you see it there, Dave? It's in the tree right in front of us. Keep going. Perfect. Thank you. This group of magpie shrikes live here. This is their area. And there's about 5 of them that I see every single time I drive this road. They're like a constant sighting that we always have here. We're going to continue on towards the hyena den before it gets too dark, and I do want to see if they have moved. In the meantime, Brent has got a very large herd of buffalo wandering across the road. So let's have a look at that.
So we decided to show you these buffalo from a bit of a distance, and you can see how they feed. You can actually see them spread out from near the top right corner, the rest of them moving slowly across the edge of our northern traverse area. It's quite an interesting view. So we're probably about, how far you reckon, John Ray? 800 meters? 790 is what John Ray reckons. So very nice, just to give you a bit of perspective. There we go, you can see the undulating hills of the Sabi Sands. Quite often when you drive around, you don't really get the impression of how undulating this part of the world actually is. Okay, let's go get a bit closer. Hopefully they all haven't disappeared across to the north. So an update on Karula. She's not too far from where we are now, but to the north of us, to east of Timbweti Dam, which is there in the base of this little dip. And so I guess she's around here somewhere, probably 500-600 meters in, and she's stalking impala. So we will be keeping a very close eye on what's going, or ear, should I say, on what's going on there. Darlene, New Hampshire, thanks for yet another question. Darlene would like to know, when you hear birds singing a song, do they instinctively know how to sing, or do their parents teach them? Darlene, I don't know if you can be 100% on this, but I would say it's 99.9999, probably 100% instinct. I don't think they are taught by their parents at all. I think they are born knowing. If you have to compare something like a lion, I don't think you need to teach a lion how to roar. He knows. Now, the reason humans have to be taught how to speak Okay, so we're going to catch up with these buffalo, but in the meantime, Jamie's got something very cute to show you.
Look at this. Isn't this incredible? These two young rams, this is this year's group that are play fighting. So these lambs were born only a couple of months ago, around the beginning of December. And look at them. Not even they are immune to the hormones that are flying about at the moment. Practicing for the day that they're big and strong and whoop. A third one deciding that it was going to be involved in that. Their horns are probably about an inch in height, although I can imagine that they're fairly sharp. So at the moment, practicing to use these new things that they have growing on their heads. Highly entertaining. I just wanted to show you that because I've seen them doing it a few times, but I haven't managed to get it on live until now. So I had to show you the two young rams sparring with each other, practicing and getting their teenage energy out in the healthiest way possible. Awesome to see. Brent is still with his buffalo, and our impala herd is moving into thick vegetation. So let's go back across to him.
So we've caught up with this herd, nice big herd. From what I can see at the moment, I'm guessing about 200, possibly a few more still coming over the ridge. And so we're going to sweep across here, and you can see them all there. This looks like a good area, especially in this weather, for them to bed down overnight, slightly more open, and buffalo will settle down. Oh, there's a little one. Oh, got an itchy tail. Buffalo will bed down and chew the cud, ruminate for the evening. Oh, very itchy tail. So he's still lucky. When he gets bigger, he's not going to be able to do that. Really giving that tail a good chew. So I think there's a few more still coming across. And just from their general behavior, it does look like this is where they're going to sleep for the evening. So they will often lie up overnight and just ruminate. Here we go. And it's amazing how quickly they've picked up condition after looking very, very skinny. Next one coming across. Let's just pop up to the top of the crest and see how many more still on the Djuma side. So I was answering a question. I was elaborating a little bit further for Darlene about why humans have to be taught how to talk, which is very different from a lot of the animals. We've given up our little chemical communications to quite a big degree. So something like the Jacobson's organ, ours is basically redundant. It's that little hole in the top of your palate. If you put your tongue and sort of suck, you'll feel it there. Whereas animals and things like that are still far more reliant on non-verbal communication or very basic verbal communication, like roaring to say, "This is my place." Here we go. There are still quite a few here. Oh, little one. And you can see little one has had a pad dropped on its head. So that is quite a common occurrence when you look at little buffalo. They have mom's dung on top of their heads because they're one of the few animals that's able to suckle while moving. So there we go. Can you get the little guy? Sorry. The other buffalo got in the way. There we go. Looked like he was about to suckle. So there we go. And he will do almost exactly like he's doing at the moment. Well, he's not going to, but he will basically, while mom walks feeding, he will suckle between her legs while she's moving. But you can see he's already old enough to start eating grass, and you can see him chewing the cud there. That's side-to-side movement. You can see that huge amount of flies around. My mom's looking quite healthy. Oh, joy. There's a little buffalo playing. So buffalo also bulk grazers, and I'm sure a lot of our regular viewers have heard me talk about how important they are as a keystone species. Specifically these very big herds, they are able to sort of change the environment around them. By moving, these big herds move big distances, because obviously if they stayed in a small area, they would deplete the grazing very quickly. So here we go, grazing, grazing, grazing. And also mobile fertilizer and soil tillers are very, very important for the grass species to have large numbers of buffalo moving through. Well, Teresa says she thinks buffaloes look grumpy when they're older because they continually get pooped on while they're babies. And speaking of ones that get pooped on, there's another little one, a different one from the one we just saw. So quite a few little babies. And let's see, has he got, no, he's lucky, he doesn't have any fresh poop on his head at the moment. Let's try and get a little bit closer to those little guys. So while we do that, let's jump back to Jamie, who's got one of the most beautiful... Oh, wait, he's doing the buck. Yes, we were looking at you. Oh, you got self-conscious. No, there it is. Isn't that sweet? So let's jump on with Jamie and some birdies.
Here's a fairly unusual bird sighting. We do see them every now and again, but we definitely don't see them as out in the open as these African green pigeons are now. They usually prefer thickly foliated trees rather than dead trees, and I don't know what's brought them out in the open like this. I would have thought that they would be desperately hiding away from the cold wind. Look how puffed up and cold they look. Distinctly unimpressed with life. One of them was just calling, and I'm hoping that it might do it again. A really, really interesting, unusual call that somebody once told me sounds like Tarzan swinging through the trees, and I've never been able to forget that. I can't do an impression, just so you know. I find it next to impossible. I'm really hoping the one that was calling will carry on. An arboreal species of pigeon. So in other words, it spends almost all of its time up in a tree, feeding on the fruits that they can find. A lovely green in color. And if we look below them, if we go down a little bit, just go straight down, Dave. There's also one very miserable looking crested barbet. Go down a bit more. There he is. He's just on that branch that's sticking out to the left at the bottom. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. He's also looking rather puffed up and shivery. Equally striking, crested barbet with its bright yellow and bright orange on its face. I know that you were looking at one with Brent earlier in the safari, but it's just interesting to see how the birds are experiencing this weather. All facing in a very similar direction, which makes complete sense. If we go up and we have a look at each pigeon individually, you'll see how they are staring off into the west or into the southwest. And that's because they're trying to face into the wind so as not to be unsettled off their perch. Definitely not the body language of a happy bird. That one's got it wrong, though. That's the wrong direction, buddy. The wind is going to ruffle your feathers. Now, Suzanne, I've spoken about the fact that I don't think that an African green pigeon is in my imitating repertoire, but Suzanne has said that she appreciates the ways the different guides imitate the animal and bird calls, and she was wondering how we learned to do it. And the answer, Suzanne, is by making fools of ourselves generally until you get it right. Basically, you've just got to try, and if it doesn't sound right, then you try again. For example, my monkey alarm call impression sounds something very similar to Donald Duck. I've attempted to work on that multiple times, but it's just stuck that way. So my impression of a monkey alarm calling, that sound, yep, that's as good as my... There we go, he's calling. Sorry, bird, I interrupted you with my monkey alarm call. Do you think you'll do it again if I monkey alarm call? Probably not. Oh, goodness, Brent's found something exciting. Let's go look.
Look at this, we've just found a male leopard. We were just sitting next to the buffalo and this male leopard just appeared. Jean-Ray spotted him. We're making jokes about where Karula would go. Is this leopard trying to hunt buffalo? I think it could be. It looks like it might be Mvula. Looking at those tatty ears. Station's located Wanuna Ingwe on Buffalo's Hook Cut Line, just to the west of Tamboti Dam. It looks like Mvula. And he's looking very hungry. Copy yours. I'm the only vehicle. He is looking like he's showing interest in the herd of Nyari, so he might cross north. But we're just just above Tamboti Dam, just to the west of Tamboti Dam.
I'm going to leave this busy now.
Okay, isn't this great, guys? It's so exciting. It's why you never know what's going to happen. We're busy watching buffalo. Jean-Ray and I were joking about leopards, and Jean-Ray says, I was hoping Karula was going to come. She's not too far from here. And then all of a sudden, Jean-Ray says, there she is. And then we just leopard right in front of us. And you can see how concurved his belly is. He's very hungry. And those little buffalo calves, I've seen leopards past their prime, male leopards, actually actively hunt baby buffalo. But I don't think this is a good spot, Mr. Mvula. There's no nice trees to drag him up, that buffalo up quickly. But he is definitely watching those buffalo. But they would most certainly chase him if they spot him. That he is stalking baby buffalo. This is incredible. Look at that little calf. That little calf who's bucking just ran away from its mom, bucking through the bush. Look at that. Look at this. pasture. So he's going to have to be very patient in this scenario. Especially that little calf playing is ideal. Look, there he goes again. Now, this is a very high-risk hunt for a leopard. There's only one leopard I know of. I used to see him regularly with baby buffalo calves, and that was the Camp Ban male. Not to say old man Mvula can't. So he is looking in not too bad condition. He is very hungry though. Yours, come quite quickly. He has crossed into Buffalo's Hook. He is stalking a Mampimpa Nyari now.
Can I come closer to you, David?
Afim, come straight in. So that baby buffalo is just off to the left of screen behind a thicket. Just to the west on the cut line. He's just crossed into Buffalo's Hook now. So these are obviously the male leopard tracks we came to look for, and we bumped into the buffalo, but well spotted Gendre. So Raisa in Finland says, definitely Mvula. I agree with you, 100% Raisa. And he does look a lot better than the last time I saw him. And he is a bit hungry. You can see that concave belly at the back. That's a sign that a big cat is very hungry. So you can see how his belly's sagging. But as I said, he's going to have to be patient here, stalking buffalo. And he's probably going to wait for another chance when that baby runs off like it just did away from the adult. And there were two very young babies in that little group we were watching that crossed in front of us. But now, as I say, we've seen how buffalo will chase lions. So they'll think nothing of chasing this leopard. So we're not going to move a muscle. I can't wait to see how this drama unfolds. So that baby buffalo is just behind this thicket, and there he is. It's probably about 30, 40 meters between the two. James Richard says, yay, a leopard. I've been waiting all week. I've been really hoping to see a leopard. Well, me too, James. And James has also been specifically hoping for Mvula. You can see he's actually going to sleep almost. He might even wait till after dark before attempting to take those buffalo. But again, possibly not the best strategy, because in the dark, and especially in this type of weather, they're sort of going to lie down and start chewing the cud, and they'll corral, and those little babies will be right in the center, protected by their moms and all the herd bulls. The herd bulls will be out on the edge, putting an impressively massive horn force on the edge to try and deter predators from going after the youngsters in the herd. But he is hungry, but this is great weather for him to be hunting in, although I think buffalo might be a bit big for him. Penny in South Africa says, "Aish, it would be a very bad move, or a very brave move, sorry, for a leopard to hunt a breeding herd of buffalo." I would agree with you on most cases, Penny, but I have known a few leopards over the years who have successfully almost semi-specialized in taking buffalo calves out of breeding herds. And the one I know that did it the most regularly was the Campan male in the southern Sabi Sands. Oh, the flies are biting him. Paul says it's really unusual to see a leopard hunting during the day. He hopes that Mvula is okay. Well, Paul, I think leopards do a lot more hunting during the day than we think they do. And Karula hunts a lot during the day. And you must remember, all predators are opportunists, so they will hunt as soon as they get the opportunity to, whether it be day or night, or twilight. But also, in terms of whether Mvula's all right or not, unfortunately for him, he's at the end of his days as the top male leopard in this part of the world. Tingana has definitely, basically, taken over the majority of his old territories. And also we have that male that Joost likes to call Gajima coming in from the north. So at the moment, he's surviving by trying to avoid all the other males in the area. There you go, he's off on the stalk again. And you can see how well that camouflage works as Jean-Andre zooms out. He just disappears. You still got him? Yes, look at that. You can just see his rosettes through that tiny window in the trees. We have a question from Leanne in the Wild Earth office in Johannesburg. Leanne would like to know, would leopard hunt in pairs when they're mating? Generally not, Leanne. If they do hunt, it'll normally be the female who does the hunting and catching, but as opportunistic as they are, it could be either of them. But if the female does, the male will steal the kill. So they don't actively set out to hunt in pairs, but if they are together, the male will definitely take the male's share of the kill and let the female have very little of it. And you still see him, John. I think I'm going to reverse a little bit, see if we can get another window. He has, unfortunately, moved into Buffle's Hook. I'm just going to see if we can spot him through here. No. You got him. You see him? He might have laid down again, so I'm just gonna... Is that him there? To the right there he is. That was him. So he's lying down again. So, as I said, we're just going to sit here, because if he does attempt to hunt these buffalo, he might very much be chased back towards us. So we're going to play the patience game. And one of my old sayings that I've harped on quite a bit since I've been here is the most important weapon in your arsenal in seeing incredible sightings is patience. So we're not going to move a muscle unless he does. But while we do that, I think Jamie has found some bundles of cuteness to show you.
I found some very naughty bundles of cuteness. Look how far This little monster has come from the den site itself, which is why we're currently sitting in the middle of the main road. One of the December twins decided it was going to be a very good idea to go off exploring with an older cousin that looked like June. And we should be able now to reposition. I wasn't able to get any closer to the den right then, just because there were hyena cubs barreling about the main road. Naughty things. You don't want to be out and about. Mom, it looked like Corky, has just left while you were with Mvula. She's gone off in that direction. Luckily, there's still another adult at this den, which means the cubs will stay out and play. And they seem to be full of energy this afternoon. I think that being cooped up during all of that wind and cold weather has produced a bout of energy equivalent to toddlers. Oh, goodness. Being cooped up for too long. Look at them go. Now, this isn't the easiest den site to get the best views of the cubs without driving too close to them. Nevertheless, you get the idea. And all these cubs growing up so fast and absolutely full of boundless energy. Look like November at the back. That's Madam's twins. And one of the December twins there as well. I'm not sure where the other one has gone. Can you hear them growling at each other? This is the kind of rough housing that might require intervention from Mom at some point. Oh, got him by the ear. It's amazing how stoic they are, even at this young age, and what they are capable of enduring and inflicting on each other. Pretty watching on. There's the other December twin. So all cubs accounted for after their sojourn into far too far from the den site. Rough and tumble. Oh, it's so lucky for them to have a couple of cubs of similar ages to play with. They've divided into the twins of both moms, plus November, who has decided that actually it's dinner time. Madam's going over to say hello to Pretty at the back. Pretty immediately behaving submissively to the matriarch of this particular clan. Look how big November's got. Barely fits tucked under Mom's tummy. Madam on alert, and her twins causing havoc. Oh, Mom's stepping in. Now, she is not a mom you would want to be defiant to, but because they're her cubs, treated with a degree of leniency. She's thinking about breaking up the scuffle. Oh, oh. Backing off as quickly, oopsie daisy, backing off so fast that it fell over. Definitely a more sensible approach from the December twins. Whilst their mother is a high-ranking female, she's not the matriarch. So the two little cubs that you see playing on your right are far higher ranking than the two on the left, the older two. The youngest two essentially have free rein whilst Mom is around. Oh, oopsie. You're dashing after Mom. That's also not a good idea. Oh, here comes number two. You've got very brave. Sudden realization that there's a big car and that Mom has gone quite far from safety. One of the December twins not at all bothered by those restrictions. Yes, little cub, I think it's time for you to go back to home. I wouldn't go too far. Don't be swayed by older cousins. You can see the indecision in this cub. It wants to follow mom, but at the same time, and in fact the older cousin, but at the same time pushing the boundaries of where it has, or the furthest it's ever been from home. Ooh, braving it, off it goes. And I can hear, I'm not going to reposition because there's lots of cubs, because the cubs are moving about underneath our tires. I don't want to reposition and scare them, but I can hear Madam actually reprimanding them from the main road. Oh, here we come, they're coming back now. She's made it very clear to them that this is not acceptable behavior. Now she's growling. There's a sort of a low moaning sound that she is making. And that is her telling her cubs to go back to where they belong and not to follow her. She's being met with resistance from one of the twins. One of the twins is making a noise known as squeeing amongst hyena scientists, a squeeing, begging sound. I'm going to be quiet for a moment to see if you can hear it. Fortunately, all the action happening right behind the vehicle. You little mischief, you're going to get yourself into trouble. We're not actually that far away from where Brent is with Mbula. Ah, there, she's going to come back towards the den. I think she just went out for a good sniff. Maybe to say where Corky has gone. Well, they stopped making that noise for now. I think she's going to return back here. Indecision. Those cubs still very far away. Here they come, dashing back. You naughty. So we've spoken a lot about Madam and the different characters that we have at this hyena den. But I haven't explained exactly how we've come to the conclusions that we've reached. We've been observing this hyena den and their behavior for a good couple of weeks, particularly with this new set of cubs, all of whom are under 4 months old. And we've come to the conclusion that this big hyena is the matriarch, the highest ranking female in this clan. And we've judged that purely from, first of all, her size, but also the behavior that she's demonstrated towards other hyenas and the way in which they've responded to her. Here comes a cub racing back. Oh, it's taken us some time, but we've slowly started to draw the conclusions. It's also quite clearly visible in the way in which her cubs behave. Ooh, discipline. There's the sound. She's stopped for now. That low moaning sound was coming from the adult female. I'm not sure if you could hear the high-pitched squealing of her cub. But as I was saying, we've read into the behavior. Oh, here she goes again. Now that is the sound of a very put-upon mother, I think tired of the shenanigans. little cub can't decide between dinner time and playtime, and which might be more enjoyable. Diane wondering, because this is the furthest that I've ever seen this particular group of cubs move away from the den, and Diane was wondering whether or not they are particularly brave in terms of where they're going, because they've moved den sites a couple of times. Let's just see this interaction. That's interesting. Look at that. That's not her... Oh, that's definitely not her cub. I wanted to see what she would do. Isn't it fascinating how that little cub is approaching her like that? Oh, provoked jealousy from one of her own cubs. Sorry, Diane, I'll be with you in 1 second. I just wanted to watch that particular interaction play out. So do I think that they've become particularly brave since they've moved dens so many times? Yes, I think that it has something to do with it. I also think it's the ages of the cubs. Now, it took November a lot longer than it took the December twins to venture that far from the den, and it's taken the January twins less time than it did the December twins or November. So it's due to the influence of the older cubs that we're seeing this amount of courage from the youngest ones. If it were just Madam's twins, I don't think that they would be as brave, so the youngest set of twins at this den. But because they've got the encouragement of older cousins, they've decided that it is a good idea to go wandering about. That being said, it's also the presence of 2 adults at the den site itself, which makes them feel a lot more secure. And they're curious. They're out and investigating their world. I also think that the sub-adults, so June and sometimes Bella, whenever Bella does pop up, so the matriarch's older son, Madam's older son, whenever they make an appearance, it seems as though the cubs become a lot more brave. It is quite literally they are a bad influence on them. I'm sure you're wondering what's been happening with Brenton and Vula, so let's hear it from him quickly, and then we'll be back with these hyenas very shortly.
So unfortunately, those buffalo didn't bed down there, and they continued north, and Mvula is still continuing to stalk them, so I will keep an ear out to what's happening in case they are chased and charged back down to the south towards us. So Taxon lost Krula not far from the boundary, so he's recommended where I can go have a look if she might pop down. Her general direction was back towards Juma, so we're going to make our way there, and while we do that, let's go enjoy those hyena cubs with Jamie.
Such an exciting afternoon. We barely know where to look this afternoon. All of the excitement. At the moment, these hyena cubs providing it in bucket loads. Diane, I didn't finish answering your question. Well, I almost finished answering your question, but it actually led me onto another viewer question about which particular den site we are at the moment. And they have just moved here in the last few days. We're still on Aubrey's Road, for those of you familiar with the geography of the area, so very close to their previous den. And we're now involved in a strenuous tug of war, both of them wanting the same stick. It's the sort of fight between toddlers that could lead to tears. But yes, they have moved den sites. Ooh, ooh, now there's squealing happening. I'm just going to be quiet. was hoping they would keep squealing, but they have stopped. Now, we don't know for certain exactly the dynamics. After we've spoken about the matriarch, beyond that, we don't know exactly how the hierarchy plays out beneath her. But we're fairly certain that the mothers of the other two sets of cubs, so the twins that are currently causing chaos, plus the one that is suckling back there with his mother Pretty, we're fairly certain that they are relatively high ranking. So Pretty and Corky. Hyenas have a fascinating ranking system, and it's one that is not completely understood, even now, with years and years of research based around it, and it's one that will differ from area to area, and depending on the clan size. What we do know is that hyena clans, unlike lion prides, can be made up of unrelated females, plus their daughters. So you'll have a couple of different genetic lines within a hyena clan, rather than a lion pride in which all of the females are related. Within a hyena clan, different females, and I suspect that Pretty and Corky are related to the matriarch, but I'm not entirely certain. It just makes sense to me watching the way that they've behaved. Beyond that, it's always interesting to see the interplay between them. And interestingly enough, status is inherited. So, madam's, oh, here we go, hello. Who's this who's just come in? Having a jolly good investigation of Pretty and November, the suckling cub. John has asked how many adults there are in this crackle, or our cackling hyena clan. John, at the moment, we've got three known females of this clan with the cubs at this den site. There's also a couple of other females, so there are two lower-ranking females, the one with the scar on her back, and then the mother of the twins born in February last year that we haven't seen in quite a while, and from what I understand was involved in a very serious fight between the members of this clan. There's also 3 adult males that are regularly seen around here, and you'll probably find that there's a couple more adults on top of that. So we've got 5 females that we see regularly, plus 3 males that we see regularly, and then a couple of younger females that come in and out. Ooh, mommy is coming to discipline. Interesting behavior. And she's trying to get her wayward cubs to come and suckle, but why is she sticking her head down the den, into the den, when both of them are outside? I'm a little bit flummoxed by. Maybe just to amplify the sound. But I don't know about you, Dave. I would not be as defiant as her cubs are being if that was instructions coming to me from her. No. She's one of the bulkiest hyenas I've ever encountered. Our matriarch of this clan. Just in sheer size and swagger. She makes for an intimidating figure. There she's just standing casually on poor November. I wonder what's got her so unsettled. I think it's the cubs being ill-behaved. Our Gracie, who is 8 years old, she's watching what's happening here and wondering why the mother isn't really wanting the babies to play. And Gracie, I think it's dinner time, to be completely honest. I think she's trying to call them for dinner, and they are not behaving very well. At the moment, they've managed to find some kind of what looked like a mushroom. It's either a mushroom or a bone. All I saw was a flash of white that they are now fighting over. And I think Gracie, the babies have got a little bit excited, and it's starting to get dark. She wants them back for dinner, and to make sure that they don't wander around as it does get dark, as night falls. Oh, they've got a shell. It's a giant land snail toy that they've found. Perfect chew toy for baby teeth. they're fighting over this land snail shell. As happens with the hyena cubs on a regular basis, as soon as one of them finds something interesting, then the other one wants it. They want to share in the fun. And it becomes a little bit of a... And these lessons will serve them well in future when they will have to use their body weight and their personality to get them in access to the kills. Luckily for these cubs, being high-ranking means that they could well have easy access to each kill. It's usually the highest-ranking females that have access to the kills. Lenny's asked a really good question, and Lenny, the answer to your question is not fully known or fully understood to the greatest extent. Bearing in mind, of course, that researchers have spent a very considerable time period researching hyenas, but anything could differ from area to area. But Lenny's question is really salient. It's that I've mentioned that the matriarch is the biggest one in the clan, or the largest female in the clan. Would her daughter then, as I've said, status inherited, would her daughter then go on to be the next matriarch, even if she isn't one of the largest hyenas? And Lenny most likely would be my suggestion. Cub still has this giant land snail shell down there, having a wonderful time. Lenny, to a certain degree, because that hyena will have grown up with those sorts of, or that sort of status, she's got used to emphasizing it and exerting the pressure when she needs to emphasize her own status amongst the other members of the clan. And because the other members of the clan have grown up being subservient to her, for the most part, yes, it seems most likely that that is how the inheritance will work once the matriarch loses her, either dies or becomes too old to play the role of the matriarch. That being said, there have been recorded coups in hyena clans, and what I mean by that, remember how I said that there are unrelated female lines within a clan? Occasionally, a low-ranking female line, so mothers and daughters, will get to the point where they can outnumber the higher-ranking matrilineal line. So, for example, let's say Scarback, a low-ranking female, had lots of daughters that grew up with her, and the matriarch only manages to raise a couple of successful daughters. So Madam only manages to raise a couple of successful daughters. There is a possibility of essentially overthrowing her as the matriarch of this clan. Now, that's something that's been recorded in a couple of cases, mainly in Botswana, within hyena clans, but there's no reason why that kind of scenario couldn't play out here. And then you go back to the normal sort of succession of hyena clans. There might also be a split within the clan itself. If it gets too large, and certainly they're doing incredibly well at the moment, lots of youngsters gambling about, which is wonderful to see. And as we've said, with the drought, the spotted hyenas will definitely favor the spotted hyenas. It could be that it gets to the point where a couple of females, maybe the lower ranking ones, decide to move off on their own and establish a new clan elsewhere if they find a hole within territorial reaches. November's been disturbed all the way at the back there. It's now gone from dinner time to bath time. It is getting a little bit dark at the hyena den, so we are going to have to leave relatively soon. We do not put spotlights on the youngest cubs. Oh, Madam's had it now. On the right, she's had enough. Oh, somebody's in big trouble. Oh, this is too funny. Everybody gathering round to see cub being disciplined. Madam has put her foot down. And cub still. Oh, but you are naughty, little one. Coming to run and hide behind the tree. Wasn't that incredible? Wasn't that so... Oh, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Mom. Wasn't that so easily translatable by human terms? All of us can relate to an experience like that. Absolute chaos at the hyena den this evening. The little ones are still defying Mom and racing about. Yes, I think that's a good idea. I think that that message was fairly well received. And now there's more individuals that have suddenly entered the fray. Some of the previous sub-adults, I can't see exactly which ones they are. Unfortunately, it's a bit dark, and they're dashing about in the thicker parts of the vegetation. But there's more individuals that have entered and are playing together at the back. I think it's a couple of the sub-adults. It could be Bella and June, as well as one of the February twins. Two little ones have decided to take their game to the entrance to the den. They're going to carry on playing, but closer to home, which is what I think Mom was trying to tell them. Oh, no, the temptations of the outside world proving a bit too strong. And this is one of the reasons why spotted hyenas to me are one of my favorite predators. My favorite predator, if I'm completely honest. There's something so intriguing about their intelligence. Oh, Mom's back again. Madam definitely telling off her youngsters once again. She might have left it a bit too late to discipline because they're completely ignoring her commands and just keep running away from her. They're far braver than I would be, Dave. Unfortunately, though, I know it's very dark on your side, and we have reached the end of our time at the hyena den. We don't spotlight the cubs just because of the distraction that it could provide, an additional level of distraction for the cubs that they don't need at this vulnerable age. Nevertheless, one of the most entertaining hyena sightings I have ever had here. I was talking about their intelligence. They've also got an incredibly wide range of vocalizations. And Pat, that is what gives the name, the spotted hyenas, the colloquial name of the laughing hyena. Now, you're not hearing it now because it's their contact calls between each other or the communication at the den level. But as soon as a hyena becomes excited, or when they have a kill that they all surround, they immediately start giving off this, and it sounds just like a giggle. It's an almost eerie, to me, it's an almost eerie sounding, high-pitched cackle. And that is where the name laughing spotted hyena comes from. It's the sound that sticks in people's minds. And then, of course, they've got that ghostly ooh sound. I don't want to do it too loudly next to the hyena den. I mean, not that I'm so impressive at my imitation that I sound like a spotted hyena, but nevertheless, I don't want to disturb them in any way. I don't think that they will be fooled by me, but they might get a fright with a loud noise. So lots of playtime still happening here. Unfortunately, it's become a little bit too dark for us to really be able to watch all of the details. Awesome sighting. How was that, Dave? These are such special animals. So entertaining to watch them interacting like that. Valerie is saying she's really enjoying being at the hyena den. I love it as well. To get to know each individual hyena, to me, is one of the most exciting aspects of working in an area as intimately as we do with this particular part of our little section of wilderness. Now, please don't come here, little one, because I need to start the car. Yes, off you go. Off you scamper. Madam, you have lost control of your delinquent cubs. They are completely ignoring your commands. Okay, time to go. While we make our way out of this hyena sighting and I make sure all of the cubs are present and accounted for, let's find out how the rest of Brent's evening is going. Oh, sorry, never mind. Oh my goodness, how's it? Jeepers, hyena. Are you on top of me or something? There's a hyena there, and I didn't see it sneaking up on me, and it's walked right up to my door. I actually got quite a fright. I looked down and all of a sudden there were eyes looking straight back into mine. It was a surprise more than anything. Oh, cheeky little things. Suddenly met with the most expressive pair of eyes you will ever find in the animal kingdom. Those big limpid pools of brown that the hyenas possess, with plenty going on in the background. Right, it's definitely time for us to go. It's much too dark. I want to make sure now that I've seen all of the cubs go in that direction that I take this opportunity to go out nice and slowly. Dave, just let me know if any of them decide that they want to be here as well. Goodbye, bundles of mischief. Until next time. I'm really glad they haven't moved and that we've got them for a little while longer until they decide to disappear off somewhere different. Although I think we're getting a pretty firm handle on their different den sites. It is definitely starting to drizzle. Absolutely wonderful sighting. Here we go. Rain covers on the vehicles on Brent's side, so let's try again with getting that update from him.
So we are still checking the northern edge of our traverse in hopes of a glimpse of the Queen of Djuma. So she was lost just down here, heading in a sort of southeasterly direction. So we sat quietly waiting. We didn't hear any alarm calls. So I'm taking a gander, she might have moved towards Buffelshoek Hook waterhole. So we're just going to slowly check towards there, and then we'll probably loop and come back the exact same way in case she hasn't yet crossed. But really great to catch up with Mvula. He was looking quite good compared to the last time I saw him. So I do apologize. Jeandre is probably going to have to do quite a bit of wiping of the lens. It seems like the weather is rolling in. You can hear that rip behind us. It wasn't anything breaking. It was just the Velcro on the rain covers. And now I'm seriously regretting not bringing my big jacket. So it's fascinating when male leopards get past their prime and they're ousted out of their territories. In some cases, they are able to maybe find an older male and push him out of his territory, but that is generally very unlikely. And what happens is they end up doing what Mvula is doing now. He's almost become a non-territorial male, or he actually is a non-territorial male. So he sort of sneaks around trying to avoid the other males. The fact that we've seen Mvula in this area tonight really makes me think that possibly that leopard Tingana was chasing, was it yesterday morning, was probably Mvula. But lucky for him, it looks like he got away without a scratch. So Robin in Maryland is asking, while we were watching Mvula hunt, was the wind in his favor? Now, you would think that lions and leopards would always use the wind to their advantage. They don't. If they see something, they're very much visual-based hunters. They'll try stalk from there. The wind at the moment was not really in his favor. It was swirling quite a lot, so changing direction. And here we go. What have we got there? It's either a snapping brown-veined white or a napping African vagrant. And it is a napping African vagrant butterfly. So the easiest way to actually film butterflies is at night when they're having a snooze. Okay. Bye-bye, Mr. Butterfly or Mrs. Butterfly. Now, since we've seen leopards, and we're almost certainly between one of the vehicles going to see a scrub hare, I'm going to tell you an African folklore about why the scrub hare doesn't look over his shoulder while he's running. So a long, long time ago, scrub hare and leopard were dear friends, and leopard used to leave her cubs in scrub hare's charge. And scrub hare used to look after her cubs. And during this particular litter of cubs, a massive and devastating drought set in. And all the animals moved away from leopard's lair and to where there was water, which was very far. So for a week, leopard wasn't able to catch anything. So her cubs were lucky enough lactating from her, so they got their milk. But leopardess and scrub hare didn't get anything to eat. And what have we there? You see it, Chandra? There's eyes in there. I think it's a duiker. Let me just... There you go. Yep, a duiker. And so after 10 days of no food for scrub hare and leopard, leopard came back exhausted and hungry and still no food. And she asked scrub hare, please can you bring my cubs through? She had 3 cubs at this stage. And scrub hare brought 1 cub, went back, brought another cub, then picked up the 2nd cub and hid it and went back and brought the 2nd cub back again. During the day, he'd got so hungry, he killed and ate one of leopard's cubs. And he said, oh, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do that again. Yet the next day when leopardess went out, he got so hungry during the day and he did the same. And that night he carried the single cub 3 times, back and forward to confuse the tired leopard that all 3 of her cubs were well and alive. And then on the 3rd day, he did it again. He killed the leopard cub and he ate it. But he didn't know someone was watching him. So he set an elaborate stage, smeared blood all over himself from the cubs he had eaten, even went as far as to injure himself. And as leopard got home, he made a big story about people from the local village coming and killing her cubs. And he fought bravely but was wounded. Oh, sorry, let me just listen to the radio there.
Yeah, I'm also going to close down up there.
Yeah. Everyone running home from the rain. And so the creature that was watching scrub hare was Nkwenyana, the grey go-away bird. And it cried from the top of its tree, leopard, leopard, don't believe that lying scrub hare. It wasn't the good people of the village who killed your cubs. It was scrub hare. And at that, she flew into a rage and charged at scrub hare. But he ran off at such a speed, and because he had eaten her cubs, he had a bit of fuel in the tank, so to speak, and he managed to escape. But to this day, when you see a scrub hare run, never looks over his shoulder in case leopard is chasing him. Well, thank you very much, Valeria in Massachusetts. She says, I'm amazing. Thanks very much. I'm feeling a bit shy now. And said, we're blessed to have my knowledge. Well, Valeria, it's my absolute pleasure to be able to share it with you guys. And it is wonderful that we are able to take you on a safari wherever you might be in the world.
Because this week I haven't seen those telemarketers. Hope you guys enjoy your evening.
So, we're chatting about leopards and cubs and that wonderful little African folklore. But Peter in Florida is wondering, would a female leopard sacrifice herself to save her cub? Yes and no. In certain circumstances, it has been recorded, actually in the Sabi Sands, where a female leopard sacrificed herself to save her cub. But normally, no. Normally, a female leopard will try defend them to a point, and once she realizes it's beyond, she will move out of that area due to the fact that she can always produce more cubs. So her lineage, her genetic lineage will continue on. But if she had to sacrifice herself, those cubs wouldn't survive, and her lineage might die with those cubs. So under normal circumstances, she would not, but there are abnormal circumstances where it has been recorded that a female leopard would sacrifice herself for her cubs. That particular female was a female called the Ravenscourt female, and that happened on Singita, where she sacrificed herself defending her cub against another male leopard, and she fell out of a very high tree and died. And there is a video, I think, on YouTube, and I'm not sure what to Google to have a look, but I'm sure you guys are probably much better at utilizing Google and the internet than I am. So have a look if you can see that video. It is quite difficult footage to watch, but it is really amazing and interesting footage. So, Miss Jin in Texas, I'm not sure if I'm understanding you correctly. Miss Jin in Texas would like to know, when leopards fight, why does one always lie down and put its front claws up when the other attacks? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I'm just picturing it wrong in my mind. When I've seen leopards fight, I've actually seen them go at each other profusely, smacking each other both times. I've never really seen one go down. It could be a defensive position, but I've never myself witnessed this, or maybe I've got the wrong picture in my mind. Quickly to a bush, baby!
Oh, where is he? Where is he? There he is. Can you see him there? He's just on the edge of that branch. Oh, I think he just jumped away. Getting a bush baby on screen sometimes proves to be endlessly tricky. Oh, no, he's still there. He's still there. He's right in the middle of my spotlight. I see him jumping about. Oh, you sneaky thing. There you are. Oh. Well done, Dave. Keeping track of this little bush baby. Amy, one of our viewers, Amy, asked about a bush baby ages ago. I really would love it if she were watching. I'm trying to get one on screen for ages. Amy, I'm not sure if you're watching or not. This was a couple of weeks ago that you asked to see a bush baby. And I think our sighting now over. Sorry, I zipped up my jacket in the cool wind. A slight drizzle, drop in temperature. Let me just check. No, I think our bush baby has managed to escape us, but well done, Dave. for managing to get that on camera. I can only imagine that every time we say to the cameraman, bush baby, their hearts must sort of increase, or their heart rate must increase ever so slightly. And bush baby goes from bounce, 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 bounce. It's just the way they move in the most unpredictable manner. And something like that, a sighting like that, Dave just wiping away the residue of the drizzle, which has now ceased for the moment. Now today is cold enough for me to wear closed shoes for the first time in I don't remember when. I've got my boots on, and I must say it's taking some adapting again. I'm not terribly comfortable wearing closed shoes anymore. My feet feel somewhat trapped. Bear with me 1 second. Ah, that's why I'm sounding funny. My microphone has disappeared somewhere down into the depths of my shirt. As long as I talk like this, you should be able to hear me if I just lift my... Hold on a second, I need to go searching. I need to go rummaging. It's managed to escape. Here you go. Have a nice view of the cloudy sky while I search for my microphone in the dark. Where did you... Oh, there you are. Here we go. My sincere apologies. My microphone mate tried a desperate dash for freedom, which didn't work, and I have found it and reattached it to my shirt, and hopefully there it shall stay for the duration of the rest of the sunset safari. That should sound better. Our night brings with it all kinds of exciting possibilities of unusual nocturnal animals that we may or may not see. Particularly in cold weather like this, the nocturnal animals might be prompted out of their hiding places a little bit earlier. But Vera wants to know which one is my favorite to see of the nocturnal animal species. Oof. Now that's a difficult one. Now I'm going to go with the more unusual nocturnal animal species. Now, honey badger is quite high up on my list. I really, really enjoy the personality and the body language that a honey badger sort of transmits when they walk through the bush. They walk with serious attitude. What else? Vera, I'm still hoping to see an aardvark. It's one of those animals on my list that I don't know how I've managed to live my entire life in South Africa without seeing one. But it has just been one of those things that I've missed out on. Perhaps I'm driving through the wrong areas. I don't know. It's just every time I could have seen one, I've just missed it, or I've been asleep in the car, or other such reasons. What else? A caracal would be incredibly exciting. A sort of medium-sized reddish cat with lynx-like tufts on the top of its ears. I haven't seen I haven't managed to get a porcupine on our live drives yet. Genet is all... Do you know what, Vera? To be completely honest, I don't think I can choose. I don't think I get equally excited about all of the small and unusual nocturnal species. The rarest one that we could see here is an animal called a pangolin that looks something like the equivalent of a walking artichoke, or pine cone maybe, that wanders about at night and in search of ants. Now, I say it's the most unusual for us to see, and that is because it's probably one of the most endangered species that we get out here. It's one of the most illegally trafficked and poached animals in the world. Tiny little creature, well, I say tiny, relatively tiny creature, about that big, and definitely one of the most peculiar looking, similar to an armadillo. That is an animal that I would very much like to see. I've seen two in my life in the wild, and both of those sightings I was incredibly fortunate to see. I've mentioned porcupine. A genet would be lovely to see. A genet is like a cross between a cat and a mongoose. That's sort of what it looks like. Louis the lion saying that I speak to my microphone like it's one of the naughty hyenas. Louis, that is a good point. It is a tendency I have for most. I talk to Wendy, the vehicle. I talk to my binoculars on occasion. I shout at my phone on a fairly regular basis, and I think that's largely due more to my incompetence, technologically speaking, than it is anything to do with the poor phone. But I do spend a separate portion of my day each day shouting at some form of technology, not doing quite what I wanted to do. I'm pretty sure that I'm the common denominator there, though. You know, all of the technology cannot possibly be rebelling at the same time against me. So yes, talking to things. I've also, to be completely honest, I have spent large periods of time on my own. Might be where it comes from. And Gilly, warm welcome as always to our sunset safari. Gilly lives in Wisconsin and saw a video of a bush baby stalking and hunting and killing a rat, which is actually an incredible sighting, Gilly. Definitely something I've never seen before, but you were saying that you had no idea that they were predatory or in fact ate meat. And they supplement their diet with anything from moths to insects that they might find. Speaking from experience, they have ferociously sharp teeth for an animal that small. I have, on an occasion, been bitten by a bush baby that somebody was hand-rearing, and it decided that it was far more deserving of the drink that I was drinking than I was. We had a brief momentary scuffle over it, and the bush baby emerged victorious with a small amount of blood dripping from my finger. Life lesson there: do not tangle with a bush baby that is determined, and that is used to people, of course. So they do have sharp teeth, and they are capable of being fairly ferocious little hunters, but hunting and stalking a rat is not something that's much larger than I ever realized that they went for. So actually, Gilly, I've learned something tonight as well. Thank you for that little piece of information. Dave, I have bad news for you. There's a bush baby. Oh no, he's gone to ground. Don't go to ground. Oh, there he comes again, and he's jumping. There he is. There he's hiding behind the tree. There he's down again on the ground, and he's back up again, up the tree. He may well have been searching for a moth, just to carry on with our conversation there. He's definitely on the move, whatever he's up to. Tricky as well to try and stay with. Yes, I still see you. Oh, but impossible for Dave to be able to show you right behind the tree branch. This thing is darting all over the show. There we go. Oh, there he is. There he's on the left, right on that tree. Sorry, Dave. Well done. He's in the middle of that tree, right in the middle of my spotlight, peering back at us. There he goes, to the left, to the right. See what I mean about the poor cameraman? And I've lost him. Awesome. 2 bush babies in one go. Where'd you go? Okay, all right. We'll leave that little bush baby to his hunting mission. I still see it, but it is dancing all over this tree like a jack-in-the-box. Okay. All right. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Bit clearer. Oh, there we go. Now, the reason I can see it very easily is because its eyes are reflecting the light from my spotlight, a very bright red. But because of the angle and the way that bush baby eyes are positioned, Dave can't necessarily catch that flash of red, which is why he's doing such an incredible job right in the... Oh, okay. All right, sorry, Dave. I'm going to... Oh, he went up a bit. I'm going to stop trying to follow this bush baby. I mentioned that I was bitten by a small habituated bush baby, but our beard... Never mind, Brent has got another nocturnal species for you.
So guys, you can just see under the branch there is a white-tailed mongoose. One of the more interesting little nocturnal carnivores that we get out here. There's a pair of them. There's the other one. Eyes pop up there. So cool. They're out foraging. They'll dig up frogs, scorpions, spiders, small rodents. It's quite nice. Normally they run, but we are quite far from them. Let's see, hopefully they'll pop out into the open. Oh, there you go. We're gonna try, I think, loop around on the road. We might be able to get close to them. Because obviously this isn't the bestest of best views, but there we go. It's gonna come onto the open. Once it heads closer, it's heading up towards the main section in quarantine. Okay, let's go see if we can get a bit closer. So Vera in Ohio is wondering, what is my favorite nocturnal animal to see? Wow, Vera, I don't think I could choose one. It's such a different world out here at night. And a lot of the really interesting little carnivores only come out sort of after 10:30, 11 p.m. And I don't know, I like them all. And I would say, ooh, so many choices. Jamie and I actually saw a little carnivore. It was the first time that I've ever seen them in the Sabi Sands. I've seen them in other parts of Africa. Oh, it looks like those mongoose are running, unfortunately. So we'll keep going, see what else we can see. So, as I said, I've seen them in other parts of Africa. I will try to find you a picture of it shortly. It is called the striped polecat. And Jamie and I went to visit friends of ours at Sibambili, and we were on our way home after dinner, and we saw the striped polecat on Juma, scurrying down the road, and that is like our African version of a skunk, but it's much, much smaller. Okay, you got them there, okay? No, beyond the scrub is the mongoose. Okay, well, in the foreground, you have the scrub hare, and I just had a glimpse of the white-tailed mongooses next to that termite mound. They were moving. I'm just going to go off to the right slightly, Jean-Pierre. See if they pop out around there. Anyway, we've got the scrub hare for now. So there we go. The guy who never looks over his shoulder when he's running away. Swing back. I mean, here, little Scops owlet calling. It's been one of my nemesis to find on live drives, but fortunately, that duck was broken recently. Oh, where'd those mongooses go? They scuttled off into the thicket. So, Vera, I think, there's so many different interesting species that come out at night, and I like seeing them all. Aardvark, pangolin, and brown hyena in my home reserve. We see them occasionally. And of course, the normals, I mean, the leopards, the lions, all fascinating to see how the behavior is so different at night. So I was telling you about that little striped polecat. I'll see if I can get you a picture. If not, if I don't manage to find a picture fast enough, maybe Jamie can. Oh, civet, civet, civet. Look at that African civet. Oh, isn't that cool? We've seen two of the most difficult to see little carnivores. We've got white-tailed mongoose and African civet. I'm hoping if we go a little bit further forward, we might get another glimpse once we're a bit further away, or he's a bit further away, got a bit more distance, makes himself feel a little bit safer. I think this is the guy I've actually seen right outside my bedroom at night, and our house is just through there. But let's have a look. Now, he's made his escape and he scurried off. Isn't that incredible? White-tailed mongoose and African civet. I think he scuttled into that bush there. Lovely camera work by Jean-Andre, getting there before he disappeared. Was it incredible to see him bounding? Now, what else can the night bring to us? So James Richard says, it's certainly been an incredible drive, and I concur, sir, I do. Let's see what else the quarantine clearings might hold for us. Oh, I keep forgetting about the little striped polecat. What else have we got? The luck is running thick and fast tonight, so hopefully we can get some more little interesting creatures. We've had bush babies, we've had white-tailed mongoose, civet, we've had mvula, who's a leopard we haven't seen in quite a while. Yeah, now let's go. There we go. So Raisa says she's overjoyed at seeing the civet. Oh, we've got some more eyes on the other side there. No, we've got Jamie, I think. I thought it was eyes. I think it's Jamie. There we go. Here we go. Should get this polecat short. Moth in the mouth. Or maybe I should stop trying to guess and do. I'm still getting my brain around all this technology I'm playing with. Here we go. Not the best picture. Maybe Jamie's got a better one. Oh. As I said, I'm still getting used to all this. Ooh, there we go. Not the best picture, but really cute little guys. And they do have an anal gland that can spray like a skunk, but they are absolutely tiny in comparison. I think Jamie might have a better picture than the one I've got. So it's been wonderful having you on this sunset safari, even though we didn't get to see a glimmer of a sunset in this cold and windy weather, but we were lucky enough with some amazing carnivores, which reminded me that we did start a long time ago. Who was going to be able to get to all the carnivores on Djuma eventually, to get them all on camera? I think that is definitely a long-term project. And so for me, I've managed to add another one, which is the African civet. I haven't managed to put one on camera. So really exciting. Oh, something in the ground. Oh, it's a scrub hair. I got so excited. But no, just a little scrub hair. I just caught a bit of movement out of the corner of my eye. So don't forget to join us for an exciting sunrise safari. I think I'm going to be on the hunt for Queen Karula again and whatever else might be out and about. So let's go enjoy the last few moments of drive with Jamie.
Here we go. We have a slightly different picture of a striped polecat in my mammals book to show you exactly what it is that Brent was chatting a little bit about. I assume mentioning that sighting that we had coming back from Simbambili one evening. The one and only time I have seen a striped polecat on this reserve. Now, that was definitely an exciting season, but as winter starts to arrive and the temperature starts to drop, we've got more and more exciting prospects of nocturnal animals moving about a little bit earlier and hopefully joining us for the end parts or even the beginning parts of the sunrise safari, but the end parts and definitely for the end parts of the sunset safari. And I'm sure that you all find that prospect as exciting as I do. Now, Beard, I was just about to answer your question about that you sent through about the lady with a serval pet, and then Brent found the white-tailed mongoose. Beard, you were wondering if that was a wise decision. The serval is not going to really do her any injury. Serval habituate very well, as do cheetah. The question is, do we really need to add to the number of pets that we've had? We've spent so many thousands of years domesticating dogs and cats. Do we need to add that or supplement that with animals that are meant to be wild? Personally, my personal opinion is no. I don't believe in having wild animals as pets. That's my personal belief. I can understand the temptation completely, but if I were ever to have a wild animal as a pet, it would be for me and not for the good of the animal. Whereas with cats and dogs and horses, we've actually affected their evolution to the point that they have evolved within the companionship of humans. And dogs studies have shown pet dogs release a chemical, they physically love us, they physically feel us as part of their pack, essentially. So for me, I don't believe in having wild or keeping wild animals as pets. And I just think that a wild animal belongs in the wild, but I'm spoiled in that I get to witness them in their natural environment every single day of my life. So perhaps that has given me quite a skewed perspective on it. It's up to you guys to decide exactly where your own personal standpoint on that issue lies. I know where mine sits. It would be the equivalent of keeping a pet spotted hyena, and we've seen how much of a part of the clan they are. Darlene, it is an absolute pleasure. Darlene's been watching since December and says thank you for taking all of her questions. There is nothing, Darlene, that gives us greater pleasure than being able to share this experience with the viewers across the world. And that includes questions. That is the true safari experience. And we sometimes, a lot of the time, we learn from your questions. A lot of the time, they make us think about things that we wouldn't necessarily have considered before. So your questions and comments are always exceptionally valuable to us. We enjoy hearing them, we enjoy chatting about them, and we enjoy the conversations that they spark. Well, we've come now to the end of our sunset safari on a chilly, rainy evening. Thank you, Dave, for your wonderful camera work and keeping up with the bush babies, as well as to Louise and Jerry in final control, as well as to Brent and Jandre on the other vehicle. Most importantly, thank you for your questions and your participation and joining us. Have a wonderful day and join us for the sunrise safari. Cheers.